Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Films and Stuff podcast. I'm Ethan, joined, as always, by most valuable Pete. Hey, Pete, what's up today?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
Everything is good. It is Saturday. Ring the bell. That means it's time for our weekly stream or skip segment. You know the drill. I introduce the segment. I introduce you. You take 15 seconds or less and remind our listeners, old and new, what are the rules and protocols of stream or skip?
All right. Ethan and I have prepared lists of TV shows for each other to watch. Every week, we randomly assign each other one of those shows. We watch at least 2 episodes if it's a series, or 30 minutes if it's a feature-length program. And on that basis, we determine if that show is worthy of being streamed or skipped.
Hence the name stream or skip. Without further ado, I guess let's jump into what we've been assigned this week.
Yeah, that's right. You had a little bit of an audible. I know that you were supposed to originally watch Happy Face on Paramount Plus.
That's right. Paramount Plus not cooperating with me this week. So I audibled and we both ended up on Apple TV Plus.
Yeah.
To be honest, I've been in a little bit of a lull lately. If you look back the last couple weeks, I had The Pit on Max or HBO Max, which I thought was a skip. I had Griselda on Netflix, which I thought was a skip. And now I've got Stick on Apple TV Plus. I have to say, I had reasonably high expectations for it. Reason being, it stars Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
So can't go wrong with a good Owen Wilson. Let's get into what is Stick all about. Stick follows an ex-professional golfer, Owen Wilson, playing a character named Bryce Cahill, who apparently was at some point in his career a big deal on the Professional Golf Association tour. He was rubbing shoulders with all the other professional golfers that we know. Apparently was a member of the Ryder Cup team. So he had a very solid, or maybe spectacular even, professional golf career. When he was young, he was kind of like the new kid on the block, the next big thing. And then they allude to kind of 2 things that happened and have led him to the place where he's just kind of basically down in the dumps, very much in debt. He is divorced or going through a divorce. He's driving a very beat up old yellow Corvette, and he's basically a golf pro selling golf clubs and paraphernalia in some golf course in Indiana. So definitely they're trying to depict from the beginning of the show that he has suffered a steep decline. And they allude to, over the course of the first 3 episodes, the reason for his decline is kind of twofold. One, apparently he had a meltdown on a golf course on a televised major golf tournament. And they just kind of said that, he was swearing, he threw his clubs and so forth because he hit 1 or more bad shots. And that seems to be like a very bad event that seems to be kind of led to a downward spiral. But then they also make another reference even earlier to it, and it seems like they're trying to have us as the viewers link them together. But apparently he was happily married to Judy Greer's character. He was successful golf pro, just had a son, and apparently the son died at a very young age. In the first 3 episodes, they've just alluded to this. They haven't gone into more detail. I expect at some point there's going to be a deep heart-to-heart, and we're going to find out all the details and find out that he was really in a depressed mood, and then he was in this golf tournament, and because, he just wasn't concentrating, he hit a bad shot, and everything just kind of came together, and that led to his downfall. But in any case, we're supposed to believe that he was at once a very, very successful professional golfer. Now he's down on his luck, and he comes across by happenstance who he considers kind of like a golf prodigy. The character's name is Santi, for Santiago Wheeler. And he says to this guy, look, I think you're the next big thing. I think you could be an amazing golfer. Why don't I, be your swing coach? Why don't I be your golf coach? I will cover all of your expenses. I will take you to all these tournaments and, we'll share in, all of your profits. We've kind of seen this story before where we've got, this could be, Tin Cup. It could be maybe not Happy Gilmore, but we've seen before kind of the once incredible professional golfer who suddenly lost it and now they're down on their luck and suddenly they impart all their wisdom on the younger protege and they try to mentor and guide this person, right? So this in itself is not really a new concept. I think that casting wise, Owen Wilson is great. He says a lot of Owen Wilson-y things in an Owen Wilson-y kind of whisper voice. I mean, if you like Owen Wilson's voice and thinks that he's so dramatic in how he speaks, you will absolutely love this show because he's obviously gotten the memo and he pulls out that voice almost constantly. Apart from that major plot, I found everything else to be a little bit rough around the edges, particularly with the character Santi, who also has a mother, Ilana. And then, of course, Owen Wilson brings in, his longtime caddy, colloquial being named as Mitz. And of course, they all share kind of like the mobile home trailer, the Winnebago, driving from tournament to tournament. The overall idea of kind of like an Apple TV Plus comedy based around this plot, I think like I could see how this is greenlit. Yeah. Say, look, Owen Wilson's going to be, the washed up golf pro. He's going to mentor this guy. They're all going to drive in a mobile home across the country. It's going to be funny. If I were an exec at Apple TV Plus, I'd say, I get it. That sounds great. Like, we're not really reinventing the wheel here, but I could definitely see this, being a great comedy. Let's run with it. I have to say, though, and you know me, Pete, I can't hold back. I gave it a skip. And the reason I gave it a skip was none of the elements are really coming together here. I think Owen Wilson's done, to be honest, a pretty good job with the material that he's been handed. And I think that his performance is fantastic. If you just like listening to him in that voice, he plays a pretty good character and I kind of like his character, but everything else feels a little bit like crammed together and doesn't really have like enough space to breathe. Like, for example, the child protege, Santi Wheeler, I don't really get a good sense of him. Like it seems like his character is like always like oscillating back and forth. So at first we meet him and he's like this amazing golfer, but he's kind of like a 17, 8-year-old kid with an I don't give a crap kind of attitude, right? But then sometimes he oscillates and he's very, very confident in his abilities. He knows he's the best. And we see that Owen Wilson just needs to kind of like get him to calm down and not be so aggressive in his golf game sometimes. Other times, apparently he lost his father or his father abandoned him and his father was his golf coach. And then we see him kind of like mopey around. I just feel like the character is not really written clearly in terms of who he is. Is he this rebellious kid who doesn't give a crap about golf? Is he a kid who loved golf and it's his passion, but it's really hurtful for him to play because it makes him think about his father? I just feel like they keep waffling back and forth between these two. And the kid just doesn't have like he doesn't have like a clear personality. Is he a jerk? Is he like sad? It's not clear. I don't think that they needed to bring the mother into it, although I agree that we need like a little bit more characters, but again, the mother also isn't really adding anything with like a clear personality. Sometimes she's always looking out for her son's interest. Sometimes, she's very financially aggressive. Sometimes, she's kind of sad. Like, I just don't feel like she's got a very clear personality either. And then I have to say, overall, I know that this shouldn't figure into it, but like the financial transaction for the basis for this show, I think is totally like hogwash. It's garbage. It's totally nonsense. One, Owen Wilson doesn't have any money, right? We see him basically bankrupt, asking for like small amounts of, advances from his employer. And then, when his wife sells a house, she offers to give him a substantial amount of money. And he says to Santi, like, doesn't even negotiate anything, just basically says, hey, I'll pay for everything. Even though he doesn't really have any money, he's offering to pay for everything and they'll split the profits. Okay, fine. Then the mother comes in and says, yeah, but I need an upfront payment of $100,000. And Owen Wilson's like, yeah, that's fine. And comes up with the money when he sells his house and pays Santi's mother, Alana, $100,000 up front. I just found that was like a really unnecessary part of the financial transaction. Like I would have got it that he was down on his luck, used like the last amount of money from the sale of his house, to kind of like support everybody, touring the US on these golf tournaments and everything. The idea that he would have paid someone like $100,000 up front and offered to front all the expenses, and he's like so down on his luck. I just thought that whole premise like really turned me off. I thought that was just kind of contrived. But anyway, let me get back to the show itself. Loved Owen Wilson. Can kind of get behind the premise. Mark Marone as Mitz, the long lost caddy. I think he's kind of okay in that role. He looks like a caddy. He's a little bit gruff, but there just seems to be overall like too many competing tragedies, and everyone's got like just so much emotional baggage that it really seems a little bit like forced to get all these characters together. And I just don't feel like anyone's got a clear character arc after watching, 3 episodes of this. So
Okay.
that's my take on Stick. I gave it a skip, but Pete, I know that you've watched it as well. What was your take? Am I off base on this or do I have something?
You're not 100% wrong. I enjoyed it. I will say I did enjoy it. I don't think it's there yet. I don't think anyone's going to look at it and say, hey, this is a must subscribe. I do think there's a something there that's a little bit like Ted Lasso, a little bit like Happy Gilmore. These are tropes that we've seen in the past. You're not wrong. But I think that there's just a little bit of charm that Owen Wilson brings to these roles, which elevates it more than you'd expect. I would agree that probably Santi is the weak link at the show in the show at the moment. The mother seems a bit superfluous, but I'm holding out. At the moment, it's a mooch someone's password for me. I would suggest that it's probably going to stick to that rating by the end of the season, but it's something I'm still enjoying watching.
I mean, I think we're enjoying it because of Owen Wilson doing and saying Owen Wilson-y things.
Sure.
But again, I mean, apart from him, I don't feel any, let me put it this way. I feel like I'm going with a flow on this show. I don't feel any sense of urgency. I don't feel any sense of mystery. I don't feel any sense of what's going to happen next. I don't feel any sense of will they or won't they in terms of the characters. I mean, if you think about what we watched recently on Apple TV Plus, remember Bad Monkey, right?
Yeah.
Bad Monkey, I thought, was a very good contrast to this because Bad Monkey, I thought, had a lot more kind of like mystery in terms of, well, how is this going to play out and what's happening and how are these characters related or what's going to happen, right? There was like a reason to watch the show apart from just Vince Vaughn doing kind of Vince Vaughn-y things, right? Like he carried the show in terms of his characters, charisma, in terms of, his comedic value. But in terms of the show itself, you kind of wanted to see how this thing was going to play out and what was going to happen next. With Stick, I feel like there's no mystery, right? We just kind of know what's going to happen. They're gonna, start to it's gonna be ups and downs, right? They're gonna start to grow very close to each other. And, Owen's going to look at Santi as kind of the son he never had. Santi's going to look at, Owen Wilson as kind of like his, surrogate father. Then there's going to be some event that like, drives a wedge between them, and there's going to be all this distrust and badness. And then there's going to be kind of like the redemption arc at the end, right? And he's going to win a tournament, and Owen Wilson's going to be, you know, canonized, and everything's going to be great at the end, and hugs all around. So, I mean, in terms of plot, there's not really anything that's like a mystery, and that's okay for the show. But in that case, it should be like really, really funny, or it should be really, really dramatic. And I feel like this show is just kind of like this little boat on waves, just up and down and up and down. It's not taking control of its narrative. It's just kind of following, okay, well, Owen, this is the line. Try to say it like really, really funny. Like there's not a lot of creative writing. There's no creative plot. There's nothing really that's like interesting about the show itself. It's all just leaning on the star power of Owen Wilson saying, hey, can you deliver this in like your voice and make it like funny, right? And I feel like he's just like groaning and being like, okay, but can you write something funny? Can you write something clever? Can you do something that's not just, me carrying this material? And that's kind of my disappointment with this show.
Okay.
Anyway, that is Stick, Apple TV Plus. So far, I've given it a skip. Pete, being a little bit more generous, has given it a mooch. So, all right, then what were you assigned this week?
All right, I had a show called Murderbot. It stars one of the Skarsgårds. I keep confusing them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
It's interesting. It's a sci-fi show, which is right in Apple's wheelhouse, and it's a sci-fi comedy. And so this is slightly different than what Apple has done in the past. The show is about the Skarsgård who plays a robot. It's called a SEC unit, a security unit. And it's owned by a corporation, and the corporation basically says, hey, look, if you want to go to any planet and do some research or mining, you have to apply to the corporation, and the corporation gives you a permit to do so, and you pay them for that permit, and they give you a security unit that, again, you have to pay for, and the security unit's job is to basically protect the humans from aliens, natural disasters, etc., because they're all on these different planets. The conceit of the show is, though, that as a SEC unit, he's actually disabled his governorship. So he has free will. But he doesn't tell anyone that, or no one is supposed to find out, because if they find out, then the corporation is going to shut him down and quote unquote kill him.
Yep.
So he pretends like he's a regular SEC unit when throughout the entire of the show, he has his own like inner monologue going on. Yep. And because he's kind of bored with his job, what he does is he downloads and watches like soap operas.
Yeah.
And there's like this running gag. There's this soap opera starring John Cho and DeWanda Nice and all these other actors in there. It's like a show within a show. It's kind of funny, right? It's like a parody of Star Trek.
Yeah. I thought the idea of having like the show within the show was very clever. And I thought that was maybe one of the better parts of this, which it adds a good layer of, kind of like unintended comedy. We've seen that, remember, in like Thor Ragnarok, where we saw like Matt Damon playing like Thor and Loki. Like
that's right.
It was so funny to have like, it's so, I guess you kind of call that like meta, right?
Yeah.
But I thought that was very good. And it actually provides a lot of reference material and explains a lot of the things that he can do or say is because he's relying on that as kind of like a source of his material.
Exactly. Right. So he's using that to be like, oh, well, this is how we should be interacting with the group. Now, okay. So that's the core premise of the SEC unit. And he's called a Murderbot because that's basically what they were originally designed for.
Yep.
Effectively, what happens is the plot of the series is that this group of like hippies, as it were, effectively goes to a new planet for research purposes, but they're like a commune, and they're kind of like the stereotypical commune hippies that you see in all shows that satirize them, like they believe in a pure democracy. They all have to kind of be unanimous on their decisions. They don't believe in violence. They don't believe in, they don't believe in the sec units because they think that it's like a form of slavery, that kind of thing. It's like a bunch of, again, hippie nonsense, right? And like I look at people like them and like instinctually I look down on them.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm just like, okay, get serious, be practical. You're going to another planet. You're a bunch of useless scientists. You need someone to protect you, but you're not ready to do that. And they're really naive. They're like, oh, well, everyone's lovey-dovey. No one would attack us, blah, blah, blah. As the sec unit, he's thinking the same thing. He's like, they're a bunch of naive morons who are going to get themselves killed because they believe in all this hippy dippy nonsense rather than being practical, hardened space veterans, right?
Yeah. This premise I thought was pretty weak. And I thought they could have come up with something much better. Like, they could have been kind of like an NGO, and they could have been like on this kind of like goodwill ambassador type of mission someplace. And, like that agency sending them, like, required them to take, which is a little bit what happened, right? Required them to take it. But to be honest, their mission seems, and I know it's not like critical to the show, but like their whole mission just seems like very fluffy and unclear. I think there could have been kind of a better way to do it, saying, look, we're sending you on this humanitarian mission. We want you to like, meet this tribe or something, or like, anyway, I thought there was a better way to do it. It's really fuzzy. What is their purpose? It just seems to be something that they wrote in the script, but doesn't really make sense.
It's just a premise that's there to get them to that planet on their own.
That's
then obviously someone's trying to kill them. There's some kind of something going on. Obviously, it's too soon to tell. There's only been 4 or 5 episodes. It has the potential. There's something there, but it's not hooking me yet. It's not a skip only because I like the sci-fi elements. I think the show is shot well. I think it's got some great sci-fi visuals, that kind of thing. There's some things which I think are funny, but not really. Like the humor isn't landing for me. Do I think that this is a must subscribe? Absolutely not. Do I think this is a skip? No, but I wouldn't argue if you did say that, especially if you're a fan of sci-fi. In general, I tend to be a little bit more forgiving. Do I think I'm going to stick around for the second season? Probably not. I'll see how this series ends first. But at the moment, out of my goodwill and benevolence, whatever that's worth, I would say this is at best a nuke someone's password.
So Alexander Skarsgård is, I think, the most famous of the Skarsgårds, right? I mean, he was Tarzan. He is the most famous of the Skarsgårds. I can see kind of like why he would take this lead role in the show. I mean, it's on Apple TV Plus. It seems to have like a lot of potential, but I have to say this show is rubbish. And I think you're feeling very, very generous this morning. I don't know what someone put in your tea or coffee, but I think you're feeling very, very generous. I don't think this show has anything to land on. And when you talk about the sci-fi, the elements of sci-fi, I think, are actually pretty weak. The only element of sci-fi I think that's remotely okay is kind of when he's like bitten by this monster. They show like kind of like a 3D printing kit that kind of like
to repair him,
like repairs like his side or waist or something that was kind of like bitten off. But apart from that, I think even if you watch kind of like the opening credits, they've got kind of like these little figurines. It's kind of like filmed like in very close detail or something, like zoomed in. The rocket ships, like any of their ships, don't look particularly good. They've got, I think, like very, very basic kind of like instrumentation that's supposed to look kind of like futuristic or techie. But you would never say that like, wow, that ship is like amazing. It's blown my mind. I can't believe this. They don't talk about anything like technology or sci-fi-ish. There's no concepts in terms of like thrusters, or they just don't have like any interesting technology. when you see them walk around, I mean, it just seems like this somehow has been made on a very, very low budget, and we're supposed to kind of like buy into the belief of this being, like very futuristic and sci-fi-ish. I just don't see it. I mean, I get it that you love sci-fi. I love sci-fi. I don't see any elements of this that are sci-fi. There's a few like kind of like screens, like you can see kind of like, like when he's thinking, they've got like some of these like kind of graphics, like it says like, oh, 97% or threat detected, kind of like superimposed on the screen, like near his head or his face. But again, I mean, my God, that's so boring and been done like a million times. There's just nothing interesting about like the superimposed orange wording, warning, threat detected, defenses 97%, like perimeter attack detected. Like I thought that like for a sci-fi show, this is an absolute fail. And the show itself, I'm not getting what's happening. There's if you can tell me that you've laughed or even chuckled one single time, let me know. Apart from the soap opera, I don't think you've laughed at all. It's not funny. And I don't think like any of the personal relationships we've seen are like very compelling. It really just seems like a bunch of random actors thrown together, reading a script for the first time. And in fact, I would actually think of this show as like a parody. Like, I don't consider this by any stretch of the imagination to be a serious sci-fi show. I know you love sci-fi. I love sci-fi, but I think honestly, you're giving it way more benefit of the doubt
Oh,
than
maybe.
it
Maybe.
really is worth.
Look, it's a sci-fi comedy, and those are few and far in between. So maybe that's why.
For a reason though, because a sci-fi comedy, you're really jamming two very disparate genres together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to do a serious sci-fi, you can have the Han Solo character who says some quips, but that's not a comedy. But you can have like the quippy guy in that. And that's
Yeah.
okay. You can have a comedic element to it. I'm all for that. I love it if you do it right. But it's hard to do. I don't think we can really, I'd love to think about it for a while. I don't think there's any good sci-fi comedy where you can say, oh, this is really funny and it's serious sci-fi. There's been funny movies, but they minimize the sci-fi and then they kind of like, make it kind of like Spaceballs, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is our rejuvenation machine. It's more of like an Austin Powers sci-fi where it's like goofy, silly, but it's not like a serious.
Galaxy Quest is the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
Is that funny? Can't
Oh,
remember.
yeah. Galaxy Quest was awesome.
I think that's a very hard like edge to balance on.
Yeah.
So I had to say, I mean, Skarsgård I think is great. And I don't really think his performance was bad. I mean, he's trying to play a robot who has free will, who's trying to hide his free will and basically minimize his interaction with humans. I thought he does that reasonably well. The voiceovers that he has, I thought are reasonably good. But apart from that, I think this is unfortunately a skip.
Right.
And that, to be honest, portends a bigger problem that you and I have had with Apple TV Plus over the last couple. Like we used to think Apple TV Plus could do no wrong, right? But
Yeah.
look at what we've had before. Skip, Lady in the Lake, skip, Stick, skip, The Studio, Mooch, Disclaimer, skip, and now Murderbot. Friends and Neighbors, which I did love with Dope Thief, Mooch, but to be honest, that's a little bit of a generous mooch. So I mean, we're at of 9, we had 2 must subscribes, 2 or 3 mooches, and then the balance, which is 4 to 5, depending upon how you cut it, have been skips. That's not a great track record for Apple TV Plus to say half your shows are skips.
Look, there's no defense for it, but it
Yeah,
is what it is.
it is what it is. But I'm just saying, I mean, I would say like 12 months ago, I think we thought that Apple TV Plus was the best value. We saw
Yeah.
like some fantastic things on Apple TV Plus. We thought it could do no wrong, right? First season of Silo, there was a bunch of stuff on Apple TV Plus, and we were just kind of like, oh man, Apple TV Plus can do no wrong. Now I think this year, either they've greenlit a lot of stuff too fast, or they've lost a little quality control, or maybe some of their top people have been poached and gone to other places, or it's just kind of like bad luck. I mean, to be honest, Stick is something that, like I said, absolutely I see how this could be greenlit, but it was, kind of a fail. Friends and Neighbors, to be honest, I thought it was fantastic, but that could have also been, kind of like a mooch, had it not been, done so good. So anyway, my friend, that is Apple TV Plus. I had Stick, you had Murderbot. How are we looking for next week?
All right, so for next week, you are on Apple TV watching a show called Government Cheese.
Government Cheese. Yeah.
And I am on Netflix watching a show called The Four Seasons.
Oh, with Steve Carell.
I think that's right.
Government Cheese is somehow a comedy. I'm keeping an open mind, to be honest. I don't really have a strong feeling either way. Looking forward to it. Okay, so that is this week's episode of Stream or Skip. Pete, you want to read off our social media creds so people can like what we've said, disagree with what we've said, agree with what we've said, and get ready for Government Cheese and The Four Seasons next week.
All right. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. But the best thing you can do, like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell.
Could not have said it better myself. Listeners, thank you for tuning in and listening to this week's episode of Stream or Skip on the Films and Stuff Podcast. We will see you next week with more to review.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.